you look on the screen behind me, or if you're joining us online, you can look there too, you will see some pictures here of some examples I put together of some close friendships from movies. And you guys kind of think in your own time watching movies or TV shows what friends come to mind for you. And there was something that all of these friendships had in common, and that they all went through some sort of crisis experience together that they were only able to get through because of their friendship. You know, have you had friends like this in your life? Do you have those kind of friends that when you're going through the tough times that they will be there for you? And, we're going to today look at the story of David and Jonathan to really see in Scripture where this played out. And their friendship is such a great example of a deep, intimate friendship. And so we're going to look at that today. And so the key point that I really want to emphasize today is that real friends help us get through crisis. And there's a quote that's really stuck with me over the years. And it's a quote from a pastor of North Point Church in Atlanta, Andy Stanley. And it says, "Your friends determine the direction and quality of your life." And for me, where I really found this apparent in my life, where I first started seeing this happen was in my college years. And I attended college at IUPUI, and I was part of a campus ministry there. And during the earlier part of those years was kind of a little bit tougher of a season for me. I lost my grandfather. And it was really tough for me because I really just felt like, I just need people in my life. And I had, unbeknownst to me, at the funeral home, I had friends from my college ministry that showed up, and they asked me if I could come into a separate room and pray for me, and they put their arms around me, and they just loved on me and encouraged me and just spoke encouraging words into my life. And it was then that I really started to see real friendships and what they look like take place. And so I just want to ask you guys today, think about the times in your own life where you've seen these kind of friendships take place. I mean, maybe you guys are going through a health crisis. Maybe you have lost a loved one. There's some kind of rough time. Is there someone in your life that is there for you that can help you go through these problems? And I believe right now, more than ever, we are experiencing this. I think COVID has really shown us the isolation that there is. And I think that, our friendships are so reflectant right now of that. And there was a study that was done across some different universities in the U.S., and it showed that over 80% of people, or 80% of these college students that were surveyed, just said how isolated they were, that they were so isolated from friendships and everything. And I believe, as I was really preparing this message, I really felt like God was emphasizing that COVID hasn't shown us the friends that we don't have in our lives, but it's shown us the shallow friendships that we've had in our lives. And so today what we're going to look at is we're going to continue through the story of David, and we're going to look at this relationship, this friendship that David had with Jonathan and how important that relationship was for David. And Jonathan was Saul's son. Saul, Scott talked about last week, was envious of David. He was jealous of David, and he was so much so that he was trying to kill David. And Jonathan, we see what happens here. So we're just going to look at, what made their friendship so great. And so the first thing that made their friendship so great is that they were honest. And we pick up in 1 Samuel 20, 1 through 3, and we see kind of what starts taking place here. And David comes to Jonathan, and he says, "What have I done?" he exclaimed. "What is my crime? How have I offended your father that he is so determined to kill me?" "That's not true," Jonathan protested. "You're not going to die. He always tells me everything he's going to do, even the little things. I know my father wouldn't hide something like this from me. It just isn't so." Then David took an oath before Jonathan and said, "Your father knows perfectly well about our friendship, so he has said to himself, 'I won't tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him? But I swear to you that I am only a step away from death. I swear it by the Lord and by your own soul.'" And here we see that, Jonathan is in denial about his father's hatred towards David. And, this has got to be a tough situation. He literally has grown up his entire life with his father. And I know how I would feel if I had any one of my friends in my life start telling me that my father wanted to kill him. I think I'm going to probably believe my dad over them. And so I have to kind of, empathize with this story and really look at this story. And when I read Scripture, it oftentimes helps me to relate something in my own life with it, something that maybe is in pop culture, something that just really hits close to home with me. And earlier I referenced one of the friendships, and that was the friendship of Sam and Frodo in Lord of the Rings. It was in the picture I had up earlier. Are there any Lord of the Rings fans in here? Anybody know what? Okay, so a couple of you. Okay, a couple of you. See some of you smiling like, yeah, okay, I got my buddies in here. Okay. So there was a story from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, you can go ahead and put the slide up. There was basically the premise of this is that there is a ring of power, and there are two hobbits, Frodo and Sam, and they are tasked with taking this ring of power to the fiery pits of Mordor to destroy the ring. And along the way, they meet this cunning creature, Gollum, who just loves this ring. He wants it all for himself so much so that he calls it my precious. If you can't tell, I've watched the movie a lot. So, but he wants it so much that he is going to do everything he can to get in between Sam and Frodo's friendship, because he knows that if he can come in there and if he can plant that seed of doubt in Frodo's mind that Sam does not have Frodo's best interest at heart, that he can get the ring for himself. And unfortunately, in one of the scenes in the movie, we see that, unfortunately, Frodo doesn't believe Sam, and instead he goes with Gollum. He tells Sam to go home. He ends up in this place, which is a nice big spider web with a spider. So the moral of the story is, if you don't trust your friends, you might end up with spiders. So just keep that in mind. But I say this to say, it does help me to relate these kind of stories when I read Scripture like this. And so just think of times in your life when you have had to, somebody's come to you. Maybe you've had a friend that has had to ask you to put trust in them for something, and you've been faced with the decision to trust them or not. And have you been willing to take that step and say, I'm going to trust you no matter what? And the second thing that made their friendship so great, we see here, is that they were loyal. And as the story continues, we see that David, there's a festival every year called the New Moon Festival. And every year, David will attend this with King Saul. But this year, he tells Jonathan, I'm not going to attend in fear of my life. And so I know I wouldn't either, so I can kind of feel David here. I wouldn't attend here either if I felt like my life was threatened. But he tells Jonathan, I'm not going to be there. And so this is what we see start to take place. And he says to Jonathan, show me this loyalty as my sworn friend, for we have made a solemn pact before the Lord. Or kill me yourself if I have sinned against your father. But please don't betray me to him. Never, Jonathan exclaimed. You know that if I had the slightest notion my father was planning to kill you, I would tell you at once. And so David was absent once. Saul starts questioning Jonathan. Where's David? Where's he at? And then after he is absent a second time, we then see Saul's response in verses 30 through 34. It says, Saul boiled with rage at Jonathan. You stupid son of a whore. And I know that if I were Jonathan in this position, okay, I'm probably going to start believing my friend now. So he swore at him, do you think I don't know that you want him to be king in your place, shaming yourself and your mother? As long as that son of Jesse is alive, you will never be king. Now go and get him so I can kill him. But why should he be put to death? Jonathan asked his father. What has he done? Then Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. So at last Jonathan realized that his father was really determined to kill David. And Jonathan left the table in fierce anger and refused to eat on that second day of the festival, for he was crushed by his father's shameful behavior towards David. So, two important things to notice here. The first thing that jumped out to me was that Jonathan could have been king. If I were Jonathan and I were in this position, I would be quite tempted to just say, you know what, forget you, David. Forget our friendship. I got better things in store. I'm not dealing with this attack. I'm not dealing with all this crazy stuff going on right now. But instead, we see that he was indeed loyal. And the second thing was that it wasn't until this point that Jonathan really began to see about Saul's feelings towards David, and he started to see this. So he's endured through a lot. His loyalty has stood the test of time. And even in David's absence, Jonathan was loyal and defended him. And that's one of the key points that I want to mention here is that loyalty is tested most during the absence of a friend. And can I be transparent with you guys this morning and say that I've failed in this area? There have been times where I've had some good friendships and I've been friends with people and they might have known, they've known someone else. And I've gotten caught up in the gossip, I've gotten caught up in the talk, and I've actually gotten convicted, and I've had to go to that friend who I've talked about, and I've had to confess to them. I've had to ask for their forgiveness. And I believe today that God is calling us as friends to that place of forgiveness. And I think that today there may be many of you here in the room who this is an obstacle to your friendships with people. That there is something that they've done to you, some barrier that's gotten in the way that's preventing you from restoring your friendship with them. And I believe God is calling today for restored friendships through forgiveness. The third thing that really made their friendship so great is that they were covenantally committed. As I was preparing this message, I really was thinking through, okay, there's loyalty. We see that so present. We see honesty so present. But there's something else that really sets their friendship apart. And that's this idea of covenantal friendship. And we see a theme start to take place here back 2 chapters ago when David and Jonathan first meet in their first interaction together. It says, after David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as he loved himself. And then in verse 3 of chapter 18, it says, and Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved David as he loved himself. 1 Samuel 20:16. So Jonathan made a solemn pact with David, saying, may the Lord destroy all your enemies. And David made David reaffirm his vow of friendship again, for Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. And then this leads to their very last interaction that we see together with them in verse 42 of chapter 20. It says, at last Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for we have sworn loyalty to each other in the Lord's name. The Lord is the witness of a bond between us and our children. Then David left, and Jonathan returned to the town. And I would urge that this is really what set their friendship apart. And as I really thought through this, I was like, how many types of these friendships do I really have in my life? And the only really prominent one that stood out is the one that I have with my wife. You know, on our wedding day, I stood there and made a vow that for better or for worse, till death do we part, that I would be there for her. I would take a spear for her. I would take her Sonic slushies in the middle of a work day when she's not feeling well. I would, wake up early in the morning when she's had a rough night and make her lunch for her before she goes to work. These are the kind of acts that I believe here that we need to do more for our friendships and to be committed in this kind of way. So you say, okay, all this is good, so what do we have to do now to take that next step into deeper friendships? How do we get to this place that David and Jonathan were? And I think the first thing is just being authentic. God has created each of you uniquely in your own ways. He's created me uniquely in my own way. David knew this so well that in Psalms 139:14, he says, thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. He says, other versions, fearfully and wonderfully made. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. And he was so secure and so confident in God that he just knew that he could be his authentic self, that God created him for who he was. And so I just want to say, don't feel like there's anything about yourself that you need to change. Now, unless you're authentically a jerk, then maybe there's some things you might want to change about yourself. If you're getting enough feedback on that, you might want to kind of reflect on yourself a little bit there. Got a question for the audience. How many of you guys would consider yourselves like sports fanatics? Like you're really into sports, maybe not a fanatic, but you really like sports. Okay. How many of you would maybe lean the other way and say you're more nerdy, you're more into like nerd stuff and okay, a little more hands. Those are my people right there. Okay, those are my people. So one thing to know about me is that I'm not a huge sports person. I didn't grow up in a sports environment or a sports family. I didn't play sports. I oftentimes got asked if I played basketball because of my height. but basketball is actually one of the worst things I've ever tried to play. So do pick me last if you want to win on basketball. But there was a time in my life, and I mentioned earlier my time in college, and during that season of my life, I started making new friendships, making new friends, and I really felt like, okay, they're all into sports. And I was like, I need to start learning about sports. In particular, it was football, and so I picked up the latest game of Madden. And, I think at the time it was like PS3 maybe or something. I started playing through it, and I was awful at it. But I learned, and I tried, and I started learning the lingo, knowing the stuff. And I started watching every football game that was on TV. My wife even started looking at me thinking, who did I marry? This wasn't who I married, because she's a nerd like me, But at the time, I felt like to make friends, I had to change something about myself. And so I started having conversations with people and talking to them. And they looked at me and they said, you don't really know anything about football, do you? And I was like, nope, I don't. And it was time like that I realized I just need to be true to who I am. The things that I like, the interests that I have, it doesn't mean that I can't learn new things. I can talk sports now with people. I went through that season of my life. I learned the language. I learned the stuff. I can talk it now with friends. And that's really helped me in new friendships I've made. But back during that season of my life, I started to realize I just need to be true to who I am and who God created me to be. And so I would just encourage that don't feel that there's anything about yourself that you need to change. And if you're in a dating, maybe it's a dating relationship with somebody. I've been there. Don't change something about yourself just to impress somebody else or to make them like you or love you more. Because if that's the case, then this isn't the kind of true friendship that we're looking at here, not the kind of real friendship that we're looking at. The second thing that we really see is about being accountable to be able to grow deeper into our relationships. And if you're really going to go deeper into your relationships, this is such an important key. And at the start of the year, I, like probably many people, decided, you know what, COVID hit me pretty hard. I was sitting around a little bit more than I usually do. I was eating a little more than I usually do. I probably need to start getting myself in a little better tip-top shape. And so here recently, I actually reached out to Jeremiah Clark to help keep me accountable in this area because we both have Apple Watches, and if you guys don't know anything about Apple Watches or fitness devices, they will send you notifications when somebody is completing their goals. And I will be going about my day, I'll be feeling pretty good about myself, and then all of a sudden I get a little push notification that says Jeremiah completed all 3 of his exercise goals for the day. And I'm only like through 25% of mine. So he was already keeping me accountable without even talking to me well before I even asked him, But I'm like, you know what? He's got it down. He's doing the stuff, And that's the thing with accountability. Look for someone in your life who is better at it than you. And that's okay. People are better at this stuff than you. It doesn't mean that they're not going to have problems. It doesn't mean that they're not going to mess up. But they can help keep you accountable to these things. And not even just with my health, but in other areas like my spiritual walk. I've been so grateful for Tony and other spiritual mentors in my life who have had to point out the tough stuff in me, those things in me that I'm struggling with and going through. And I've been so grateful for that input in my life. And sometimes it takes walking in humility and saying, you know what? I am struggling with that. I am dealing with that. And so when you guys have friends that come to you in your life, it's incredibly difficult. I can't imagine how difficult it was for Jonathan to come to David or to David to come to Jonathan and tell him these things about his own father. But he did. And so if somebody has the courage to come into your life and to speak these truths into your life, listen to them. Because I can't tell you how impactful it has been on my own life that I've allowed this to be able to happen. There's other great avenues here at the church for this. One is our men's group that meets here at the church. Such a great group of guys that just are encouraging each other, like I talked about earlier with some of the health and fitness stuff, really just pressing into that and encouraging each other through that too. So guys, men, if you're not part of a group, I'd highly encourage you to be part of their group. And the last thing here that we really see about taking our relationships into a deeper spot, a deeper place, is that we need to be active. Friendships are about being intentional, And so there's some great opportunities be able to do this. Volunteer experiences, community outreaches. You guys are in the perfect place for friendship to come into practice. We have so many great serve teams here at the church, childcare team, our tech team. If you guys don't know, I'm typically running around on a Sunday morning, kind of running some of our sound and media stuff. And in preparation for today, I was like, okay, I've got to prep my message, and I don't want to have to worry about all the stuff going on that I usually do. And I called these guys up, I asked them, and so Garrett, Sean, Jeremiah, Noah on camera, thank you guys so much for helping me, because that's really meant a lot to me. And so these are those kind of avenues that really just allow us to have new friendships. I mean, I've grown in my friendships with these guys because I took the initiative to say, you know what, I want to do something and I want to serve, and we have my First Impressions team. I know a lot of you who are in the room are on that, and it's such a great avenue to be able to meet people, and it's all about being active and pressing in to those friendships. And I wanted to share with you guys a kind of a personal testimony. I reached out to our life group this past week, and I asked them if they would be willing to share just some encouraging words from their time. If you guys don't know, my wife and I, near our start of attending the church, started a life group up, and we've made such good friendships through the years. And I wanted to share with you guys this morning one of the comments that was on the post that I made, and so many of them were so encouraging and great. But I really wanted to share this one because I really feel like it communicates the heart of this message. Who wrote this? She didn't know what my message was going to be, but I wanted to read that to you guys this morning. She said, "One thing I value about our group is the constancy. People do come and go, and our lives have changed quite a lot over the years. But at the same time, I know that I still have that group of friends who will be there for anything. I love that we celebrate the high points in each other's lives and support each other through the low. I can think of one particular night we'd met. I'd been having a tough stretch, and people noticed that I wasn't myself. No one tried to get me to talk or forced hugs or anything, but I had multiple texts before I even got home, just letting me know that if I needed anything, they were there. As someone who puts a lot of stock in loyalty and accountability, knowing I had people who would show up when I needed it meant a lot. I love that we talk a lot, but we also listen a lot. When we have differences in perspectives or opinions, it's just that, a difference. No one is necessarily right or wrong, and we give each other the space to share those differences without judgment and in ways that help us understand ourselves and each other better." And this is really what happens as a result of stepping out in our friendships with people. That there are people who are in this church, who are in our world, who want to be there for us, who want to love on us. And so I would just encourage you today that, if you aren't currently a part of a life group, if you aren't a part of one of our serve teams, our volunteer teams here at the church, just step out and get involved. Your Connect card, just say, I want to be involved. I want to be a part of something. And I would just say, too, don't go into it expecting to make friends. Don't say, I'm going to do this because I want friends. We're called to be friends. And then that's where true, real friendships form, because people see our genuineness, our authenticity, and they want that too. And I would also say on the reverse side of that, who are those people in your life who are maybe the bad influences on your life? Are there people in your life who are influencing you in a negative way that you need to end the friendship with? Because I know for me, I've had those kind of friendships. I know I've had those friendships in my life that have not been healthy for me. Paul tells us that bad company corrupts good morals, good character. And that rings so true with me when I think about all the situations I go through in my life. Who are the people that I'm surrounding myself with in my life that will really impact it, and that I can impact their lives? And the last thing that I really kind of wanted to end with today was this quote. And it says, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." Who are those people in your life right now? Who are those people that in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, will your life be better in 10 years because of the people who are in your life right now? And if it's not, really do some reflecting on your friendships in your life. because I am so, so grateful that I'm just in this season where I have so many great friends. And I'm just so thankful for that and the support that I've gotten from each of them. And so, I want to be a friend to you guys. I mean, if I haven't met you yet, come up to me after service. I love being a friend, Jesus is my friend. I want to be your friend too. So I would just end on that today, that who in your life is impacting your life in a positive way. And if they're not, then you need to do some serious reflection on that. And we want to have these types of friendships, these real friendships like David and Jonathan's friendship that can help us get through any crisis. Let's pray.